Morning and welcome to the MPW webinar series. Today's workshop is a personal statements workshop, which is delivered by our MPW Birmingham Vice Principal, Mr. Adam Cross. Can I please ask that you mute your microphones, and if you are also welcome to ask us questions throughout the session. Oh, I can hear somebody's microphone. Could you please mute? Thank you. You are, of course, welcome to ask us any questions. You will see there is a chat box, and Adam has kindly put a link there, as this is going to be quite an interactive session. So please do join us throughout the activities, and feel free to ask any questions. Adam and I will answer them at the end for you. Thank you very much. Hi, Adam.
Hi Betty, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good morning everyone, and welcome to you all. It's fantastic to have you here. Thanks for so many of you joining us this morning. I'd just like first to introduce myself, and then I'll give us a quick run through of what to expect in our workshop this morning. My name is Adam Cross. I am the Vice Principal at MPW Birmingham. And I work very, very closely with our students, all of our students, on their university applications. I work with students particularly on highly competitive courses, such as dentistry, medicine and veterinary science, but I have a lot of exposure to a whole range of other applications as well. One of the things that I spend an awful lot of time doing around, from this time of year through to October, November, December, is helping students perfect their personal statements. Now, what we're going to talk about this morning is what a personal statement is. So if some of you don't know what a personal statement exactly is at the moment in terms of the university process. Sorry, I've got a little bit of feedback. I don't know if we've got any microphones on.
What about his wallet?
Sorry, if I just make sure that everyone's microphone is muted. My apologies. So I'm going to introduce you to what the personal statement is to start with, and we're going to think our way through what the recommended structure of the personal statement is, and I'm going to give some hints and tips as to how to construct a fantastic personal statement. And then in the last chunk of the session, we're going to do some analysing of personal statements. So I'm going to get you to be critics of personal statements. So we're going to see some examples. I'm going to try to get you to think about what is good and what's not so good in the examples we're going to see. As Betty said, I'm going to need your feedback throughout the session. So at the top of the chat box, I've put a link to a Microsoft Forms page. And if you click through to this, as we go through the presentation, I'll highlight which question I want you to answer and give you a couple of minutes to answer it. And then I'll be able to see what your thoughts are and to see what sort of expertise we have about this already. Why a personal statement workshop then? Well, if we just think about our domestic students, our UK-born students for a second, it's a difficult thing for our students to write a statement about themselves. And that's students that have lived in the UK all their lives and English is their native tongue. So when we come to supporting international students, we realise that actually they need even more support for constructing their personal statement. There are language barriers to get over, there are grammatical barriers to get over, and so this really is to give you an insight into all of the help we give our domestic and our international students to craft the perfect personal statement. At the end of the session, I've got one of my current students that is going to join us as well, so you'll be able to hear from a current MPW Birmingham student and be able to ask her some questions too. Right, so that is just a little introduction from me. We'll jump straight in then. And I want us to start by thinking about just getting the foundation in first. What is the personal statement? It's a term that you might have heard quite a lot, but we need to first understand exactly what it is. The personal statement is a requirement of the universities and colleges admission service in the UK when a student puts in an application for any higher education course. We're going to call the Universities and Colleges Admission Service by its acronym UCAS throughout. And what they say is as follows. So they tell you that a personal statement supports your application to study at university. It's a chance to articulate why you'd like to study and what skills and experience you possess. But relatively straightforward. So this is no different really to a sort of a supporting statement you would write for a job application. But this is for the university course that a student is applying to. When it comes to the entire application, we often, probably one of the most commonly asked questions I get about the personal statement is how important is it? And I get quite a lot of people over the years saying to me, well, admissions tutors that read these, they don't really have time to look at them properly. Surely no one reads it, surely it's not that important. The feedback that we get from universities every single year is that the personal statement is absolutely vital in terms of the application. It's not something that can be deprioritized. And part of the reason is that there are some things that only the personal statement can get across to a university. And these are things like social skills, work experience, teamwork, sporting ability, wider involvement, all of these sorts of soft skills that can't really be seen by an academic profile. So it's absolutely vital that these things get included in the personal statement. Admissions tutors receive an application. They use personal statement for a number of things. Firstly, and the obvious one, is it can help them to understand whether they should make a student an offer or reject their application. Some universities use it firstly to select for interview, so whether a student should be interviewed or not. As a student then progresses down the sort of path in their application, then a personal statement can often be referred to ask questions at interview. And sometimes on results day, if a student narrowly misses a grade for their offer, admissions tutors can go back to a personal statement and actually use it to see whether they should make a borderline case an offer or not. Sorry, just in terms of anyone new that's joined, can I just ask you to mute your audio, please? Can I hear a little bit of background audio? Apologies, thank you. And then, yeah, like we said, if there's a borderline case where a student misses a grade, the personal statement might be gone back to by an admissions tutor to see if they want to give a student a place. This is quite interesting because most people, when asked about personal statements, just think it's purely for that initial offer or rejection stage. In fact, we can see it's used for a lot more. So again, just really pressing home that point about the importance of the personal statement. So we're going to turn ourselves into admissions tutors. We're going to think like a university admissions tutor. Now, the task that you have is that you are getting thousands and thousands of applications through the UCAS system. And we need to think about what they might be looking for. So imagine you're reading these applications. What might you be looking for in a written personal statement? And also, what are the things to avoid? So this is our first, just our little starter exercise for you guys, just to make sure we're all awake on a Thursday morning. If you follow the link from the chat through to Microsoft Forms, there should be 6 questions there. I just want you to focus on question 1 and 2 to begin with this morning. And I'd like you to answer those 2. And those 2 questions are, what are admissions tutors looking for when they read a personal statement? So what are some of the things that they might be on the lookout for? And what are the things to avoid when writing a personal statement? I'm just going to give you 2 minutes. Please get typing. Submit your answers once you've put them in. Really gives me a great idea of what your background knowledge and expertise is, and we can use that as a starting point for the rest of the session. So 2 minutes, see what you can come up with.
Rebecca, there's a task. I don't know if you've just joined, but there's a task that is happening. Adam, do you just want to maybe repeat? There's a link, Rebecca, that you can join. So Adam's just waiting for participants to complete the task.
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, if you have a look on the chat box of the webinar, there's a link to Microsoft Forms. And we're just asking, I'm asking two questions at the moment. What are admissions tutors looking for when they read a personal statement? And what are the things to avoid when writing a personal statement? And then if you could submit your answers through Microsoft Forms, that'd be great.
Good morning.
Hi again, can I please ask everybody to keep their mics on mute, please, as it is causing some disruption for Adam.
I've just reposted the link, had a couple of requests just to post the link again. So I've just posted that, so that should appear as the most recent message on the chat. We'll just say 30 more seconds. Just any thoughts on this? Please don't worry, it doesn't need to be particularly long answers, just any thoughts you have about what admissions tutors are looking for and things to avoid when writing a personal statement. Right then, okay, so let's have a think about this. Thanks very much for those of you that posted some responses, some really interesting thoughts here. Just some of the things that have been posted here. What are admissions tutors looking for? Passion, knowledge of the subject, knowledge of the university or the institution you're applying for. Absolutely. What are admissions tutors looking for? Someone saying good spelling, punctuation, grammar. Absolutely, it's really, really important. Things to avoid, talking about personal life, someone has put, yeah, that's absolutely. So trying not to focus just on very, very normal, ordinary sort of interests, that absolutely. And again, we've got avoiding spelling, punctuation, grammatical errors. So yeah, so some interesting points there. And really, the point about this is that this is no different to a job application. The things we're looking for here, the things that admissions tutors are looking for would be, you know, the same positives and negatives as with a job application, but just with some very, very specific things to do with the course. So what we're going to think about then is what actually admissions tutors are looking for. And this comes from feedback from talking to admissions tutors. So every year there's a survey of admissions tutors around the country at UK universities, and it asks them various questions about the application process. So this is from asking them what are they looking for in a personal statement. Some of these might, you know, be a surprise. Some of them, you know, are quite obvious. I'll put all of them on screen, and then we'll just look at, and we'll think about some of the key ones. So like we said, interest in the course. This is the most important thing. Every statement written by a student needs to show that they have a genuine interest in the course that they wish to study. And it's a pretty obvious thing. And this really is the first thing we would expect students to write about in a statement. We've got their mention of no spelling or grammatical mistakes, clearly written, so good quality of English. Work experience, so any work experience and voluntary work. Obviously, if it's relevant to the course, that absolutely needs to go in. But also any work experience or voluntary work, even if it's not 100% relevant to the course, can show sort of softer skills and these sort of transferable skills that they're looking for. Academic interests is something that students often forget to talk about. So this is talking about things that they've enjoyed studying, things that they've enjoyed reading about, or any wider sort of reading and research that they've done. We've then got the idea of extracurricular activities. This is something that students will often overstate, so they'll often spend too long talking about extracurricular activities. This needs to be mentioned, but it's perhaps not as important as some people think. Paragraph breaks. If you look at sort of one of the final points there, one of the piece of feedback we get from admissions tutors is when students just write a solid block of text and they don't have any line breaks. They say that actually makes it harder for them to read, and it means they're more likely to disengage if they're halfway, getting halfway through. Just solid text can be really difficult, especially if they're reading thousands of these. So little things like this can really help. What to avoid? We said spelling grammatical mistakes. It's an obvious one. Out-of-date experiences. This is really, really important. When a student is writing about their experiences and they talk about something they did in primary school, that's too long ago. It's no good, saying that they were, class monitor when they were 5 years old. It's not relevant. So really, experiences need to focus on their sort of A-level or their post-16 study, and maybe what they did in year 10 and 11. So from about the age of 14 up to present is about the time frame that they want to talk about. They need to not lie. It sounds really, really obvious and really silly that we're saying it. Students need to make the most of their experiences, but it needs to be experiences they've actually had. So in terms of telling the truth, it just gets messy. If they then get invited to interview and they get asked about their personal statement and they get asked about one of these experiences that isn't true, then it can cause a whole lot of problems. What to avoid? Waffle. And what I mean here is just too many words. Just explaining something and taking lots and lots of words when actually you could write about it in fewer words. So students need to be concise in their writing style. Swallowing a dictionary, swallowing a thesaurus. Students need to write the best quality of English that they can. They need to use, good quality terms, and by all means they can use they need to use a dictionary. They can use a thesaurus, but not at the expense of it actually sounding like them. So they need to be able to write in a style that's sophisticated, but it sounds like their voice. And any of you out there that are Friends fans, there's a very sort of famous clip from a Friends episode where Joey's trying to write a statement and he's used a thesaurus on every word, and it just stops making sense. That's a really, really good example. I know it's from a comedy show, but it just gives you a good example of how something that has made sense when it's been written by a student can stop making sense when they actually process it through these sorts of packages. So it's really, really important to be careful with the use of those. Students need to make sure they back up anything they've said with evidence. So if a student says, well, I had a really enjoyable time on my work experience and it taught me about the medical profession, they then need to make sure that they're actually giving some appropriate examples, that they are backing it up with examples from their work experience, or they're more specific about their work experience and they say, well, from my work experience that I completed at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in August 2019, they need to give that sort of level of detail. And that just helps to make it seem more real to the admissions tutor. Lists. Let's think about shopping lists. When you go shopping, you will write a list of all the things that you want to get. Admissions tutors will often complain that personal statements can look like a shopping list. So what to avoid is saying, the skills I have are as follows: teamwork, hardworking, good at correcting my mistakes, and so on. You've got to get beyond a list. Students have to go into more depth about their points and expand on them rather than just coming up with very, very long lists. And they shouldn't be writing about very, very simple things. So going to the pub, going to the cinema, playing football with their friends, has to be in the extracurricular section. When they're talking about their interests, it needs to be, only more interesting, sort of more notable interests than that. And the main thing, and this is one of the things that we work very, very hard with our students on over a long period of time, rushing. they have to avoid writing a personal statement in a matter of, a couple of days before the deadline. That will never yield a good personal statement. So what this means at MPW, we start the process, we've already started the process with our students that are applying next year. So our students that are currently in year 12 that will apply to university next academic year, we are currently working with them on writing their personal statement. And this is a sort of the start of a process where they start to pull together their research. And then over the coming weeks and at the start of June, we have some more formal sessions with them. And we keep this then going all over the summer period and then come to a conclusion at the start of the next academic year. So students can't do it last minute. And then what to avoid, don't include information elsewhere on the application. So very, very basic things like dates of education and so on, they are found elsewhere. They don't need to be repeated. So how do we write a unique personal statement then? Students need to be aware of using jokes. These are things that, again, we see from experience, students trying. And part of the reason why they try these things is because they don't really know where to start. So a common way of students actually making a start is to put a joke in. We've got to be really, really careful about this. Jokes can be offensive to some people. It can make a student seem that they don't take the application process seriously. So it's sort of an avoid at all costs thing. Along the same lines, students need to be aware of using quotations. And this is probably more rife than using jokes. A lot of students feel that they have to use quotations to get across their interest. If a student has a genuine quotation that has inspired them, by all means use it. But what happens here is a lot of students rely on Google to get quotations, and they don't have a real interest in them. They're just something they found on the internet, and they can be very repetitive. Admissions tutors can see these lots and lots of times and get really sick of them. And then we need to be aware of mistakes. And also we need to try and be aware of the most commonly used phrase, turns of phrase that are used again and again and again. Now, quick question for you. And if anyone wants to just quickly type a guess of an answer in the chat box, just for this, we won't use forms for this, but this is a phrase that has been seen many, many times in many different medical applications. So from 2017, how many students wrote and there is a mistake here, the mistake was copied as well. Ever since I accidentally burnt holes in my pajamas experimenting with a chemistry set on my 8th birthday, I've always had a passion for science. How many applications for medicine in 2017 do we think contained this phrase? Any guesses? Anyone wants to type a guess into the chat box? We'll have a prize for the closest guess.
I said 1,000. Maheen said 1,200. Karina says 650. Anglia Education say too many.
I like that one. Definitely too many.
Irene says 800. Tara says 2,000. Rebecca says 60% of the total applications.
Right.
Pinnacle Counselling over 500. Oluwajuwan says 10,000. Chimway says 7,000. And Olalaken from UCAS says every single one.
Right.
Audrey says 2,000. A very good answer there.
Thanks everyone, great answers. I like definitely too many, definitely not every single one. I think what this tells us a little bit is that actually our young people do actually, they do tend to write unique things. So not as many as there. So 234. Now, personally for me, I think that's 234 too many, not quite at the levels that some of us are guessing, but really, even if it was 50, it would still be too many. What this tells us is that students fall back on the internet. They fall back on Googling, personal statement quotations, and they will then pick something that a lot of other people have said. And obviously this is not a genuine experience, something like this. And straight away, an admissions tutor will know that actually this is it's not a really high quality statement. So students need to be really careful with that. Some others to think about. So we've got here an example of a student trying to use humour. From a very early age, I've always had the ambition to put my arm up a cow's backside, obviously a prospective vet. And we might have a giggle at this, certainly, you know, when you see lots of these, you know, it is remotely humorous when you're looking from our perspective, but straight away we would tell a student that they couldn't be saying this. It's not appropriate for applying to something like veterinary science or any course. Here's another one from a personal statement. This is to illustrate mistakes. VE Day 1947 heralded the end of the Second World War. Now, if this was a history applicant, then they'd be in trouble because VE Day was in 1945, as we all know. We've just celebrated the anniversary of it. So factual mistakes are problematic. And then here we've just got sort of phrasing problems. My mother and I frequently attend dog shows where we have won many prizes. So without careful proofreading and checking, this can read like the mother and daughter have won the prizes rather than the dog. So just got to be careful with these little things. So really just to illustrate to you some of those little problems that can be overcome just with very, very careful sort of help for the students that we provide. Here I've just put for interest top 10 most commonly used phrases with sort of how many times they've been used. And we can see here some of these are just normal turns of phrase. So from a young age, I've always been interested in, for as long as I can remember. There's nothing inherently wrong with these. If students can think of alternative ways to phrase these, it can just help their personal statement to stand out. Doesn't need to be anything sort of crazily different, but just using, you know, some different turns of phrase apart from these can really help. So well worth seeing those, and we show these to our students. And when we're reading personal statements and providing help, you know, we'll often say, well, actually, this is really commonly used. Can you put it another way for us? So how do you write a unique personal statement? So with avoiding things like humour and quotations, we've got to try and show passion. We've got to get the students to really show genuine passion. And this really boils down to two things. They need to know about the course they're applying to, and they need to have a genuine desire. So how can they do this? Well, 4 suggestions here to how a student can show an admissions tutor that they are genuinely passionate about what they are studying. So writing about any relevant books or articles that they've read in relation to the course. And that's the key thing, in relation to the course. Writing about relevant academic courses. Now, this is most likely to be their A-level interests. So, for example, if I was applying to dentistry, I might write about actually the fact that I've really enjoyed studying about the nervous system in biology. Write about experiences that relate to the course. So this is work experience, voluntary work. This could be any research projects, things like the extended project qualification, anything like this. And then writing about the degree course. This is where a student really needs to know what the course is about, what its structure is, what the focus of the degree course is, and they need to write about their own personal interest in that. So, students need to be aware of description. We mentioned this earlier on. And here's an example. You know, I carried out work experience. I did the following tasks: answering the phone, making tea, talking to patients. It's not enough. It's not terrible because it's going to tell the reader that some work experience has been done, but it needs more depth. So the 2 E's are important here. Once you've described, not in a list form, you need to explain, you need to evaluate. So here, for example, some further description first. I carried out work experience every Saturday for 6 months. So that gives that specific detail. It makes the reader think that it's more real. During my placement, I routinely talk to patients. And then they might say, this helped me to develop my interpersonal skills, or this helped me to develop my empathy skills because a patient I spoke to was particularly upset about you know, a procedure that they were having. And that just gets to give more detail to the reader about what's going on. And it shows better English skills, but it just shows that really they've got their brain switched on about why they want to study the course. So describing is your starting point, but then it needs to develop into explain and evaluate. Now, what this boils down to, from what we've said so far, is just some key bullet points. And this is where we start with our students. We say that we've got a 4-stage process for personal statement writing. And students can think of this as 4 paragraphs. And this just helps to break this down in their head to make it less daunting. If a student is asked to write a complete personal statement in one go, they will often panic about it. If we say, well, actually, your personal statement is just 4 paragraphs, can you go away and write me, you know, a first paragraph like this, a second paragraph like this, then it makes it more attainable for them. So paragraph 1, why are they interested in the course? Paragraph 2, what have they enjoyed studying about the course? So this is their academic interests, their wider reading. Paragraph 3, details of any relevant work experience or voluntary work if it's a vocational course that they're applying to. If it's a course that doesn't need work experience or voluntary work, they can still talk about broader experiences here to show those transferable skills. And then paragraph 4, extracurricular interests and activities. Now, paragraph 4 should be no more as an upper limit of 20%. So really, paragraph 4, between 10 to 20% of the personal statement. Some students will try and spend 50% of their personal statement on paragraph 4. Not necessary. Less than 20% is what's needed there. So that's our structure. It's what we give to our students. It's a really simple way of engaging with writing a personal statement. In terms of the nuts and bolts then, the personal statement can be no more than 4,000 characters, including spaces, and that is a strict character limit. The application form online won't allow you to put in anything longer than that. It can be no more than 47 lines, so there is a line limit, and there's no bold, italics, or any other formatting. So you can't have a sentence that is in bold or another sentence that is in red. When a student pastes their personal statement into the UCAS form, then all of that is stripped out. That can have a couple of consequences because actually characters are limited as well in terms of special characters. So for example, if someone puts down, I took part in a recent fundraiser and I helped to raise £50,000 and they use the pound symbol, actually it takes that out and it replaces it with a sort of a substitution. And it might be something like GBP 50,000 instead of the actual pound symbol. So where possible, we do say to students, try and avoid using any special characters because it can just make a bit of a mess of it when it's actually put into the form. Right, so that's the first half. Really just a very, very quick run through of some of the key things for you to think about as you're advising students and to give you an idea of some of the things that we do with our students to help them produce a fantastic personal statement. I will at the end talk about some specific points about the MPW method for this, just to reiterate. But for the next part of the session, I want us to do a little bit of work at actually looking at some personal statements. So our next task then is to read an example of a personal statement and to answer what has been done well and what has been done not so well. Now, saying yes, did a few people not able to get through to the?
So yeah, so a few people saying the link isn't the link for the form is saying it's private for some of the participants.
Okay. What I'll do, I'll post it again. I'll post the link. We can try it again. If it doesn't, while we're reading personal statement A, I'll just see if I can quickly troubleshoot that.
Thank you.
Okay. So, personal statement A, 2 questions to ask yourself: what has been done well? What could be improved? And I'll put that up there. Okay. So, if you can have a read of this, say a couple of minutes, and think about good points, bad points. If this was a student that had come to you with this personal statement, what might you give them in terms of feedback? Right, we'll say 2 minutes and I'll see if I can troubleshoot Microsoft Forms. Right, everyone. I think the Microsoft Forms thing is working now. I recopied it and I've posted it again. So give that a try. That should hopefully be working for you now. So you can post your feedback about the good things and the bad things about this personal statement. This is questions 3 and 4 on the Microsoft Forms page. All right, guys, I know there's quite a lot for you to read there, but we'll just say 1 more minute and then we'll look at some feedback on what we think are the good points and the bad points of this. Like I say, if we can type out any feedback, questions 3 and 4 on the Microsoft Forms link, and then we'll review. Right then, thanks for the feedback on that. I've got some interesting responses there, so thank you very much for those of you that have shared those. Just have a look at a couple of these responses then. So what has been done well? No spelling mistakes. So yeah, so always a good place to start thinking about the absolute foundation. Is the spelling okay? You know, grammar, is it generally okay? Punctuation, so yeah, absolutely. So it's written well from that perspective. Yeah, we've got another one about well written in terms of no bad grammar. Wide range of activities provided, followed by reflections on the activities. Absolutely. I think what we would get from this is if we were looking at the student, we'd say, well, they've been involved in things. They've participated. They've got voluntary work. They've taken part in productions and young enterprise. So it's quite a nice picture from that perspective.
Adam, there are quite a few on the chat box as well.
Okay.
So education, Beatrice says too many pieces of information, too superficial. She should have expanded on young enterprise, the only experience truly related to her future BSc. Plus, there is no significant reference to her academic subjects, theories, authors, no personal reflections, no critical thinking displayed, nor future plans. So I don't think Beatrice was a fan of this example. Alex says the first paragraph saying she wants to study law, but then the second paragraph saying website design. Olalekan says the thoughts are not in sync. How can you be interested in business and understudying a barrister? And Karina says, I find it needs more focus on relevant comments about the course of interest.
Yeah, some absolutely fantastic responses there. And you know, we've spotted that very, very quickly. So yes, this is roughly well written, lots of experiences to talk about. But the first thing to note here is, like we've said, not focusing enough on the course that they want to study. So if we look at the first paragraph, just to pick this apart a little bit along the lines of some of the feedback, it starts on a negative. And I think that with students, they often do this without realizing that they're almost apologetic and that they'll start on an unintentional negative. Although I enjoy studying maths and geography, it is business studies that I wish to pursue. Straight away, it's making the admissions tutor think that business studies is their third subject that they like. And actually, I'm not sure if they even like business studies. So it's saying, well, I enjoy maths and geography, almost like, but I don't enjoy business studies, but it's what I want to do. And so have to be really, really careful about starting on the negative. This doesn't need to mention maths and geography at this point. Further on in the personal statement, by all means, they might talk about maths and geography in the academic interests paragraph, because there's going to be useful experiences that are relevant, but it shouldn't come first. Absolutely. So it needs more of a focus on business. If we look at the second paragraph then, what we've got is, amongst all of these really good experiences, it doesn't prioritize the things that are relevant to the degree, again, as we said. So we would go for the most useful experience there is the Young Enterprise Scheme, because this is directly about running a business and getting an interest in sort of the business world. That should come first in that paragraph. Duke of Edinburgh, well worth talking about. Help the Aged, worth talking about, but that has to come lower down. Really here, I would say, I feel, and I think someone commented on this as well, this comment about 12th night, this is where I really feel that this student comes to life. They're talking about drama and 12th night, and that's where I really feel their interest. So they have to be careful that they get that same level of enjoyment and interest across on the page about the course that they want to study. They, of course, can talk about drama, you know, excitedly, but it's got to come a little bit later. It can't be prioritized. Let's go back to the first paragraph. And again, this follows some of the comments that we've got. A comment here saying, how can you be interested in studying business and studying under a barrister? And again, it's that confusion. First paragraph, I was lucky enough to shadow a barrister for a day to gain an insight into the legal profession. I hope to study aspects of law as part of my degree. Now, we know that there is a lot of crossover between law and business, but it needs to be tailored towards business studies. So if this was saying, well, I shadowed a barrister for a day and their speciality is business law, absolutely fantastic. Again, they could talk about that. If it wasn't directly relevant to business, that could come later on, but that really shouldn't be in the first paragraph, because from that first paragraph in my head, I'm thinking, right, well, they want to study maths, they want to study geography, they want to study law, and business feels like playing second fiddle a little bit. It feels like it's the poor relation that is being left out. You just can't have that. Your first paragraph has to sing about the subject that you want. Now, the positives here is that with not too much work, this really could be, you know, made into a much stronger personal statement, because the background ideas and the background experience is there. Other thing, again, a nuts and bolts issue, this is far too short. 4,000 characters, it's the upper limit, but really admissions tutors get suspicious if a personal statement is not approaching 4,000. So really, somewhere between 3,500 to 4,000 characters is needed. anything below 3,500 characters, and it's far too short, and the admissions tutor will start to worry. Fantastic responses there, so really appreciate that, and very, very well spotted. Let's move on then to, we've got on the PowerPoint here, we've got positive features. We've talked about all of these, and yeah, short sentences, clearly written, no spelling errors, we've spotted, and then yeah, we'd identified all of these. These will be in the slides that you'll get a copy of, so you can have a think about in your own time. I'd just like to have a look at statement B. So different one now. What has been done well? What could be improved again? And again, question 5 and 6 on Microsoft Forms. If I post the link again at the bottom of the chat, or alternatively, if you're struggling with forms or can't get through to it, then please post some comments on the meeting chat. That worked very well as well. Again, 2 minutes, have a read of personal statement B. What have they done well and what could be done better? 2 minutes, see what you can do. Just to clarify, this is question 5 and 6 on Microsoft Forms. So just keep going for a minute. Obviously, we need to plough on a little bit. Just some of the responses that are coming through. Well spotted by one of our attendees today. There's bold here and there's italics. So we said earlier that would be stripped out straight away. So they're trying to here highlight particular skills that they have using italics and bold. It's not going to happen. It will be taken out as soon as it gets put into the actual application. So well spotted. Right then, so in the interest of time, if we've got any final comments, let's have a look. So some of the comments on the chat, so much waffle, absolutely. There's a lot of words here which are not needed, and it's the sort of the idea that they could really say some of these points in far fewer words, so they could be a lot more concise. Yeah, absolutely. Too many pieces of information, not non-deep enough, absolutely. So there's a lack of expansion on some of these points, absolutely. Good start. More emphasis on working customer service or nursery, not related to engineering, absolutely. So really good points here. That not picking the right things to focus on. There's lots of stuff going on, but not really making that, picking up on the things which are most important. We have got some grammatical issues here as well. Not particularly focused on the course. Yeah, absolutely. We've got loads of good feedback here. It's fantastic. Sorry, just at this point, before we just quickly go through this, if I can just say hi to Leisha. Leisha has just joined us. Leisha is one of our current students at MPW Birmingham. She's joined us just for the last part of the webinar today, so she can tell you a little bit about her experience at MPW with her personal statement and with her UCAS application. So we'll hear from her in a couple of minutes. Right, so let's have a look at this then. Thank you everyone for your feedback on this. I really appreciate you participating and getting involved. And like I say, got some good eyes for this. Sorry, last comment from Audrey. Thanks, Audrey. It's better than the previous one. Just say at the beginning that it relates to the course. Absolutely. So this is meant to be a step up from the last one. If we're looking at negatives here and things to go for straight away, this first paragraph, this first line particularly, this is the one that needs to be eye-catching, and really it struggles to be. And it's because it's going through this sort of list of possible ideas that this person has had as a career. And again, I'm left puzzled within that first sentence about what this person wants to study. So started by choosing a science rather than art. Physics, maths, engineering, well, which one is it? And it's only when we get to the end of the third line that we actually figure out that it's mechanical engineering. So students have to be really careful with this. If we carry on going through, like we said, we've talked about the bold and the italics. We've got then mentions about business studies. We've got mention about IT. They're fine, but again, we've got to be careful where they come so it doesn't confuse the reader as to what is going on. Overall, what I ask students to think about when they look at some of these examples, the one like this, is how much do you feel that you have an affinity for the student? How much do you like the student? How much do you like reading this? And I think one of the big problems with this is that I don't think this student comes across as very likable. And I think the reason for this is because I think this has had a little bit too much work through thesaurus and the dictionary. And I think what's happened is this student has actually lost their own voice and it's starting to sound like someone else's voice. Now, if we look at, excuse me, if we look at the bottom line for this, and I think this shows it really well. An exclusive ubiquity of mine is that I am contented with mixing my social with my educational life at length, making the two important factors. Well, I don't really understand what that means. I don't know whether anyone can shed light on it. I just don't get it. It's wordy. Yes, it uses ubiquity and, extensively. It maybe sounds quite academic at a glance, but it doesn't make any sense. And this is what students have to be really careful of. They cannot trade the sense that a sentence makes for all of these extra words that they would never ever use. So you've got to be really careful. Just to summarize this one, it's still too short as well. This is not 4,000 characters. Like I said, it's hard to understand what they want to study. Sentences are too long, and some of us have picked up on some of the grammatical errors, so well spotted. And like I said, I think this person comes across as being a little bit arrogant, not particularly likable. This is one that a student has worked on, and I think they've put good work into this, but it's not had the time to be proofread thoroughly, or this might just be a very early form of it. So with proofreading and with work and support from a tutor, this would actually start to get into shape pretty quickly. Now, the last one, and we're not going to sort of talk at length through this, so I'm not going to get you to read this now, but this is an example of one of our students' personal statements from recent years that was a really good quality one. It's never perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect personal statement, but this ticks all of those key boxes for what a student needs for a high quality personal statement. We can see straight away, we've got clear structure. We've got paragraph line breaks to make it easier to read. We can see straight away that this student wants to be an engineer. And yes, they're talking about other subjects, but it's in context of wanting to study an engineering degree. The second paragraph, they talk about engineering specific work experience. They talk about details, where they've done it, exactly what they did. Talks about, if we look at in the second line, end of the second line in that second paragraph, I had the opportunity to visit the paint shop while I was there, giving me an understanding of how perfect the quality of each car must be for customer satisfaction. So it's not just a list, it's expanding, it's explaining, it's evaluating those situations that they've been in. We then go on, we've got discussion here about the academic interests. So it's talking there about maths, talking there about physics, but it's in a relevant context. And then at the bottom, we've got the idea of the extracurricular. So that very last paragraph, that's where they then start to talk about playing in a team, captain of the football team, playing squash and so on. So it's important to include those things, but we can see that only takes a very, very small amount of time on there. So really what we've got here through example A, B, and C is the evolution of the process that we see. Most students actually don't get past that example A and B level. And it's through very, very careful and individual attention to our students that we get them to get up to speed of this sort of example C standard. So before I talk to you about very quickly what we do at MPW in terms of personal statement support, Alicia, I would just like to hand over to you. If you can just talk to us just for a minute or two about your experience of working on personal statement with us at MPW and how our team have helped you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Alicia. Thanks
Can you
for
hear
joining
me?
us this
Can you
morning.
hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, so I think you're good to carry on.
Perfect. So my experience with the whole UCAS application and personal statements with MPW has been both insightful and absolutely amazing. Obviously, in comparison to my old school, the college has really guided us as students through the whole process by helping us pick out specific universities tailored to our courses, and especially up to handling paperwork after receiving offers, as well as amazing interview preparation. I think one of the best support systems that I found at MPW was the one-on-one personal tutor sessions that we had. So everyone at MPW is assigned with a member of staff who is their personal tutor, who guides them through the whole UCAS process. And with me specifically, my personal tutor taught me the key principles behind a personal statement and how to properly structure one specifically towards the course I was looking at. So the course I was looking at was medicine. He helped me explore the different work experience opportunities I'd undertook by creating kind of mind maps, which really helped to gather specific thoughts that I had. And I think the key fundamental thing that I was taught by my PC was that it's best to just be true to yourself in your personal statement and to be able to capture your personality in an A4 page effectively. And obviously that can be difficult for some, because obviously there are so many different ideas and so many different opportunities that you have throughout your 2 years or however long you've been doing work experience. But I think each paragraph should capture a different part of your personality with the aid of each paragraph flowing effectively. So obviously you need to have the correct balance of work experience and education, as well as having other outer interests, for example, hobbies, any extracurricular activities or any courses you may have attended specific to your course. because obviously universities, as Adam said, like to look for a well-rounded individual that seems likable. And I think an interesting thing I learned the other day whilst attending one of my online virtual open days for one of my universities was that I didn't know that what universities do is that they print out your personal statement and they highlight specific points that really stand out to them. And I feel like once you're writing your personal statement, you should get maybe other members of staff to go through your personal statement and highlight through key things that they think might stand out. Because obviously at the end of the day, I mean, especially at MPW, every single member of staff is there for your support, and everyone is there to help out with any type of issue or any type of application help you need. So yeah, are there any specific questions you'd like me to answer, Adam?
That's fine for now, Leisha. We'll have some questions at the end, but yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think that Leisha makes some really, really important points there. Number one, Leisha's personal statement, when I first saw, I'm Leisha's personal tutor, when I first saw Leisha's personal statement, it was well written, it was a good standard, and it didn't have any massive problems. But really, the difference can be made by just very fine tweaking, lots and lots of attention to detail. And Leisha mentioned a few things there that we worked on. One was about prioritising her work experience and voluntary work. Leisha had loads of it, and we sort of run out of space. You know, we could have written the personal statement twice over. And so it was about helping Leisha to identify what were the key things that she needed to include. What should she prioritise and what should she deprioritise? And then we worked on trying to get a thread throughout her personal statement that linked her interests and her experiences. So Leisha's was very much that sort of top end support that she had. And then again, a very, very good point from Leisha was that we worked just on sort of pinpointing for the particular universities that Leisha was targeting, what were the things that they were looking for. Now, Leisha is currently, you know, sitting on a firm offer for medicine at Anglia Ruskin University. So it worked for Anglia Ruskin, did a great job at interview as well. And so, yeah, fingers crossed for results there for Leisha. But yeah, like I say, it was really just that idea of attention to detail with Leisha's that made the difference. Thank you very much, Leisha. If you just hold on there, just got one last slide and then we'll take some questions. So just to summarise what we do, and this is just really, really simple. We focus on early reflection. So we try to get students to think about a personal statement as something that they need to be thinking about and working on from sort of the middle to the end of year 12. It's not something for last minute. We then have group sessions. We have UCAS preparation events and a UCAS preparation fortnight at the end of the first year available study, where we give group sessions, seminars, presentations and so on. And we will get external speakers from universities into those as well. That's quite in common with most schools and colleges, but where the difference is made is these next points. That each student has a personal tutor, or in London and Cambridge, what's known as a DOS, a Director of Studies, and this is a senior member of staff that works with each student one-to-one to meet all of their needs. And obviously, in terms of personal statement, the need is to make sure that this statement is up to scratch. So it's that one-to-one personal tutor support that helps. And the process goes that a student will draft, and then they will get feedback from their personal tutor, and then it will get redrafted, and it goes back and forward. It's personal statement ping pong, we call it. It's table tennis, back and forth, back and forth. And with some students, Leisha, I can't remember. It was probably about 5 or 6 drafts that we went through to get it right, somewhere around there, from what I can remember.
Yeah, probably more, to be honest. I feel like it's so difficult to kind of pinpoint a point where your personal statement is absolutely amazing, because obviously there are going to be some errors, but I think at the end of the day, it's just down to the fact that if your personal statement flows, if it sounds amazing, and if it specifically makes your personality shine, then I think that's more or less. I think maybe we got through 7 drafts, I believe. So I think I have 7 files.
Okay.
So something like that. On your computer. Yeah, I do.
So with Leisha there, we worked through about 7 drafts, back and forth, with some students, I'd say my maximum, my record is up to about 20. It can easily take that, especially with international students, to get it absolutely spot on. And then Leisha mentioned as well, support from a wide range of staff. We want our students to have the expertise of all of our staff members. We've come across certain schools and colleges before where they don't like students asking for different opinions from different members of staff. We actively encourage that. So we want our students to go and give their personal statement to other members of staff and see what they say. And this way, by getting lots and lots of eyes on the personal statement, it can really, really help to just make it, you know, as high quality as possible. Because what one of my colleagues might see, I might not have seen, or they might have, you know, a little bit more expertise in a certain area, and so they can give a little bit more advice there. So we try and get a wide range of stuff. To summarize this then, why do our students make, why is this difference made to our students? Why do they make fantastic applications? It's because of individualized help. It's about bespoke support. It's about one-on-one support and on an ongoing basis. This is not something that is just done as a group once. That's the worst case scenario. What we do, we focus on every individual student on an ongoing basis, and that could be as many times as is needed. There is not an upper limit to the amount of times that we can work on personal statement with a student. Right, thank you guys. Sorry, I appreciate I'm 5 minutes over, but I think you'll appreciate it was well worth it to hear from Leisha as a current student. It's always fantastic for you guys to hear from current students rather than just from the staff. I'm more than happy to take any questions, and if you have any for Leisha as well, then please let us know through the chat box, and Betty will tell us any questions that have come up. We'll do our best to answer them. But thank you very much for your attention.
Leisha, thank you so much. Really, really nice to hear your experience.
No problem. Are there any specific questions that need to be answered?
I think at the moment, Leisha, we don't have any questions, but we will wait and see if anybody does have any. But I think it was a very thorough presentation from Adam, and from your explanation was brilliant. So
and yeah, so Leisha, Karina, thanks Karina for the feedback. Karina says, thanks for the presentation, lovely comments from Leisha. So well done, Leisha, you've done a stunning job.
Thank you.
Leisha, how are you coping with the online learning?
I think it's okay, to be honest. I thought I'd struggle more, but I think now, as we're getting used to it, I'm kind of adjusting to it more now. I think, to be honest, with me, I've got all my books spread out all over my desk, so it's kind of hard for me to pinpoint which book I'm using at what point, because obviously lessons are so all over the place. But I think it's okay, to be honest. At the moment, we're doing presentations and different types of outside of spec content at the moment, which is quite useful, to be fair, because obviously of unprecedented circumstances with the whole coronavirus thing. But I think, yeah, college are really supporting us in terms of aiding us towards undergraduate study at the moment, which is quite useful.
So Leisha at the moment is she's reading ahead sort of for medicine. So she's doing some sort of further reading to prepare her for September. She did a fantastic presentation earlier in the week. We've been doing research in biology about drugs and how they work and their mode of action. So she did a fantastic presentation on Tuesday for that. So yeah, preparing for undergraduate study really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, good luck, Leisha. I really, really hope you you get the results that you are obviously looking for, and that you do kind of remain positive throughout this period as well. I don't think we've got any further questions, so we won't keep anybody any longer. Karina says, well done, Leisha, for having a firm offer for medicine.
Thank you so much.
And I think that's it for us, Adam. So thank you so much, Adam, for your very informative presentation. Once again, thank you so much, Leisha, for joining us, and best wishes to you. And to all of our partners, thank you, and parents and students who have joined us today. Thank you all so much for joining us. This recording will be available to you later on today, together with the presentation. And of course, if you do have any further questions for Adam, for Leisha, for myself, please feel free to email us at international@mpw.ac.uk. Thank you so much. Stay safe, everybody, and we shall see you soon, hopefully. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Betty.
Thanks.
Thanks, Leisha.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. See you. Bye.